when I should have left myself alone. But I couldn't have, oh no, I couldn't have. I always open my gut when I shouldn't have, oh no, I shouldn't have.
I'll start. Here we go, bro. Yeah, man, we were just saying how the gym that you're in, right, in a fight is taking a little bit more of a step towards the GPP and the family base. And I find having traveling around, dropping into certain gyms, whether they're CrossFit or not, whether it's a bloody F45 or not, I find more and more gyms are taking that approach. And they're just like, okay, well, how do we like give back to the local community and the wider population a little bit more rather than just servicing the athletes, right? Because they're going to walk through the door very small proportion of the time, and they don't pay for the lights to stay on, right? Like the money that they're paying for the gym is you're not going to have a business for very long. And I like the little switch we got going on of how do we give back to the population that surrounds the place that the gym is in that little local community. Like you said, we've gone into a bit more family orientated. Okay, cool. Like, how do we do it? We hire a kids coach, get the kids in. I think it's great. I think it's perfect. I think you've really molded the environment inside the gym to suit the environment outside of the gym.
Yeah, well, there's a saying, right? Evolve or die, isn't there? Which is quite a good one for nature in general. But I think you find this across any level of sport. We're hearing a lot lately, probably because the Olympics is on. Certainly as a Welsh rugby fan, we're hearing a lot around grassroots and getting that right. And then it extrapolating out up to the top end of the sport. But same things in sports clubs around the world is if all the sports clubs only focused on the top 1% of the sport, there wouldn't be many at all. And it is really the grassroots level. And I think that's where we probably see ourselves a bit within a fight, is like we're ready to take on anybody in any sort of situation that they're in. So if you want to, we have some of the top athletes in the world coming and training in the gym using the facility. But we also have, people who've just come out from whatever cardiac surgery or being out of action for however long they have been in their life, losing 60 odd kilos with us and just wanting to take their first steps to get back into it. And I think that's the beauty of what we offer, is we have something for everyone. And I think all good, if you're in the fitness world and you want to be a fitness facility, then you should have those offerings if you want to give back, like you say, to the world of fitness. Otherwise you pigeonhole yourself in quite a tricky situation if stuff changes.
Yeah. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, right? A business owner might be like, this is what we do, this is who we serve, everybody else can get fucked. And you're like, okay, well, it is your business at the end of the day, you do have that authority. But I like to see it as like this like ripple effect, right? Like a drop going into a lake or the ocean, and it just starts spreading out. And that's what I find with this thing of like, okay, well, Glassman back in the day drops the teardrop into the old ocean. And now everybody's like, okay, but now what about this? And now what about that? And I was like, well, no idea is a bad idea. Let's see where it leads. Let's see what it does. Like, let's see if it works. Let's see if it doesn't. Most of the time it half works. And you're like, cool, we gotta mold this in a way that suits us as people, as leaders within the gym, as a business. And then also the people who want to come into the gym with the cultural differences that we have around the world, right? It's like a gym in the middle of Glasgow is not going to be the same gym in the middle of Madagascar. Like it can't be. We have to be able to adapt to the people, right? And that's usually like, what do you want? What do you need? It's like, oh, we need a little bit more of this. Cool, let's go do it.
Yeah, then that's exactly how Inner Fight Endurance came around. I think probably about 10 years ago now, because obviously Marcus, owner of Inner Fight, was big into the CrossFit scene. And then one day someone came along and asked him if they'd help them train for an endurance event. And he's like, look, I don't know anything about that, but what I do know about is strength training, and I'll learn alongside you with what it takes to help the strength training merge alongside the endurance training. And then 2 years later, he hired a coach to specifically help him with helping people to be better at endurance. And, you know, a couple of years after that, 5 or so years, I came along, and then we started to see the vision of what inner fight endurance can be. And then 6 years on, we have 5 other coaches, you know, all working under the one inner fight endurance brand, running alongside parallel to the, you know, whatever you want to call it, fitness or CrossFit brand of inner fight. But, you know, when I came into the business, I had no idea about CrossFit or anything. Like, I still really don't know a lot about it today. But I've managed to build, you know, we've managed to build an endurance business alongside it to complement it. Members switch back and forth, which we're really cool with. You know, some people have a mix. They come to some endurance stuff, they go back to mainline. And actually, when you look at it on paper, they're some of the happiest and sort of best performing members that we have, because they're not boxed themselves into one area. And I love to see it. Absolutely love to see. This morning we had our Track Tuesday session. We've got members from the gym there running, and tomorrow they'll be back in the gym, you know, throwing down, as you guys like to call it.
Yeah, throwing down. Yeah, shirts off, screaming at people,
Exactly.
you know, dropping F-bombs. I love it, man. Throwing down. Has endurance always been your thing?
No, rugby used to be my main sport. I played all sports growing up. But yeah, rugby was sort of what I realize now. The more I learn about identity and how we identify as humans, I definitely was identified as a rugby player from about 6 years old all the way through. So my junior team, Haverfordwest Rugby Club down in Southwest Wales, I played for all age groups, youth, seconds, and first team. Went through the whole ranks, and yeah, loved it up till about 20 years old, and then I moved out to the UAE and played a little bit out here, but not enough to be consistent and make it into the team regularly. And I was kind of immature back then, and if I wasn't being able to play in the top team, then I didn't really want to play. So threw my toys out the pram and stopped playing, and then started what I would sort of call the endurance side of my brain kicked off, which really began just through seeking, you know, what could I actually do. And it just intrigued me because I'd done fitness tests before. I'd run what I thought was mad long distances, which was only like 5 or 6 Ks. And then suddenly the prospect of running marathons and doing, you know, Ironman triathlons and ultras and things came into my field of vision. And then, yeah, I guess it was it was 10 years then of just seeing how far I could push myself down the endurance in the endurance world. And a lot of other things happened along the way. But it's been, 10 or 11 years really, where I'd say I've been really into endurance sports and taken all other sports sort of off the table, if you like.
What position did you play?
In rugby, I was a scrum half.
Wow.
Yeah. The annoying one running around. Used to
the agile
be the one
one
who starts the fights and then get out of the way.
Yeah, I played one back in the day. I played loose head pro.
Oh wow. Yeah,
that
we
was
wouldn't
my
have been
thing.
mates then. Wouldn't have spent
No,
much time talking to you.
I'd have gone after you.
Yeah.
I find endurance athletes fascinating psychologically, because it's like this constant pursuit of curiosity. Like you have conversations with all types of endurance athletes, and they always have a question of like, what if? You know, it's quite open. They're quite open questions to themselves, and it's always like seeking more knowledge, right? And then let's flip the coin and go to more of a strength-based athlete, and you have the similar conversations with them. And I find like their mindset is usually stuck in like an angry dog situation, right? Where it's like, well, I want to tear through a wall, and if I'm not under a barbell, I probably would do. And it's like, wow, like what elevates a human being to those levels, and why do we choose left, not right? Why does one individual go to a bit more strength bias? Maybe it's because of their psyche, or maybe it's because of their physiology. And then one athlete goes a bit more towards the curious side and they go a bit more long, bike, swim, run, whatever, doesn't matter, endurance. And I find they're a hell of a lot more open-minded individuals. I mean, this is a wild kind of hypothesis. It's a broad brush, but it's more of a combination of all the conversations.
Yeah, I think there's more unknowns in endurance, right? So you've got to be, by nature, you have to be a little bit more open in your mind to be willing to accept the unknowns. Whereas strength training, you have your plan, you show up, and you've got every day almost a chance to sort of or live the known. Like, you know, you're going to get to the gym at this time, you know the session's going to be about an hour, you know what you're doing. Whereas endurance, a lot of things can change even in just the time of the training session. Or maybe you have planned to run whatever, an hour and a half, but at 40 minutes in, you feel terrible and you might have to just call it a day there. Whereas you rarely get that with a strength training session, unless you're doing like high end, you know, 3-4 sessions a day type of strength training. But I think people get into endurance because there is more unknowns, and those unknowns ask yourself questions, and then you become more interested in answering those questions. It becomes less about your sort of performance and more about, well, here's how I reacted to the situation. I think that's why people get more drawn towards it. You're almost, without being aware of it, figuring yourself out.
Have you figured yourself out?
I've definitely figured a lot of things out about myself through endurance sport, but I don't think I don't think anyone can really say that they've truly figured themselves out, because to do that, you'd have to go through every single scenario that could possibly happen to you, which is obviously impossible. It would be infinite. And so you can't actually say that you know exactly how you would react in every situation. But I've definitely learned things about myself through endurance sport that I don't understand how I would have learned those things without going through what I did.
Yeah. Like, I am by no means an endurance athlete, but I can think back to certain charity events, which, you know, gets into the double figures of hours, you know, and it really does place you in a different spot. It's like you're in a different realm. You know, you've walked through that door and there's no going back. And it's like, oh shit, I didn't know that part of myself existed. You know, I didn't know I thought about this situation in my everyday life that way. Or you analyze the reaction or an overreaction you might have had. Oh shit, like, I actually know why I get pushed there now, and maybe we can work to divert away from that. It really is like a different realm.
Yeah. And there's a few small like nuances that make that happen, right? Which is like, you're less distracted, I think, doing endurance sport with technology. You can for sure be over distracted from your watch and things, but I see it a lot. People strength training in the gym, they still have their phone open. They're still checking messages, and they're still like getting a little hit of dopamine here and there between sets and reps. Whereas when you're running, you can check your phone if you want, but it's a pain in the ass, especially if you're using a touchscreen, you're sweating on it. You can't type properly, you know? So you just chuck your phone in your bag, or you leave your phone in the car and you just run, or you ride, or obviously when you're in the pool, you can't do any of that. So you're getting these breaks of like, sometimes on, say, a normal weekday for some people, most amateurs, at least an hour and a half or to 2 hours in the morning, especially because people love training in the morning, where you don't have anything coming in, you know, any messages coming in. You're just listening to yourself and figuring out your own inbox before you're getting to your real one. And on weekends, that might actually look like 4 or 5 hours, you know, if you're on a long ride or a long run. And that, I think, is a lot to be said in this day and age, about distractions that we have in our lives, and endurance is definitely an escape from that. And on a larger level, endurance is an escape from your actual life that's going on as well. So you've got a reason to be uncontactable for a longer amount of time. You've got a reason to just go and ride. And sometimes I call it being feral, where you're just out of sort of normal human behavior realms, you know, when you got running kit on or cycling kit on, you can, whatever, you're just sweating. You don't care how you really look. You don't care, you know, what's being said in your own head to get through that particular time. You know, you're just on your own. You're in it with yourself. No one's distracting you. No one's sort of able to say anything to knock you out of your state that you're in. And I think people crave that, and you might not have it 90% of your training time, but those small 10% times that you do get it, you crave it again. You go looking for it again. Yeah. And that's actually the dangerous part, I think, of endurance sport for people, is if that time where you get that flow state or that uninterrupted, just pure state of happiness, if you chase that too much, you will do all the things that we know that happen when you train too much, you know, overtraining. You get cranky when you don't get there. You get annoyed at people who do manage to then disturb you when you're in that spot. You know, things that are out of your control, you get more annoyed around because they're out of your control. And the best sort of endurance or amateur endurance athletes are the ones who are cool with just showing up and knowing that at some point that flow state will find you. But if you go looking for it, it won't. It'll evade you. So you've got to practice patience and understand that when you're ready, you will get the time that you're looking for. But you've got to be patient and trust that it will happen. And the fitter you get, the longer it takes to happen.
Yeah, you got to be a hell of a lot more patient to get like 3, 4, 5 hours deep to finally get into the flow state. You know, like the Muhammad Ali quote: "I don't count reps. I only start counting when it starts hurting." You know, it's like if it takes hours to get there, bloody hell, you're going for a long time, man. You know, and I think
that's so true, especially in like the Ironman realm. You know, your long ride is 5-6 hours, and when you get really fit and you really want to perform at the Ironman triathlon, your warm up is about 4 hours. You know, in the pool, you have your warm up is 1K, like do 1,000 meters of swimming at your warm up pace before you're ready to get into the main stuff, and the main set will finish at 4.5, 5Ks. Like you have to practice patience.
Do you think meditation techniques, grounding, all that type of stuff that has come up with, I forget the app's name. Is it Mind, Calm?
Calm, yeah.
One of them, something like Headspace. I think that's probably one I was thinking of. Do you think those meditation techniques are something that's going to center yourself a little bit more, pull you back in, slow you down, essentially, mentally? Do you think that would work for endurance?
Yeah, I think there's elements of it that have to be practiced. And my belief around those things, they're very good if you've got the ability to follow them. But I think people who need those apps the most, they don't actually see that they need them. You know, when you need to calm down and meditate and find peace with yourself, and if you're an aware person who knows that, then you probably already have techniques in place to do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Whereas these apps, like, I would love to see the data on how many people have downloaded them and they last like a week or two, and then it's forgotten about.
Yeah.
So I think what endurance is good at is you either learn to, we say relax. Probably relax is the most used word in our coaching, I think. We must say relax 10, 15 times a session. And relax doesn't mean, go lie down on the floor. Relax just means stop fighting yourself. Just relax, right? Like, yes, that rep was run at 5 seconds per K too quick. It's fine. Relax. You're still alive. You're still going. And I think that's what I would call headspace, is understanding, being aware around you of like, does it really matter? Yes or no? Like, figure that out first. And same thing with most people's anxiety. When they're really anxious about something, the question that they should be asking themselves really is, does it matter? Yes or no? Is this going to change anything major in my life? More often than not, the answer is no, right? But when you're anxious, the answer is yes, because you're so caught up in it. And an app coming along and telling you, to breathe and blah, blah, blah is great, but you need it in the moment. You have to train it in yourself in the moment, unless you want to stop when you're anxious, stop everyone around you, put the app on, calm down for 5 minutes and get back to whatever it is you're doing. So yeah, I think they're good. And I think endurance athletes should definitely, seek out what they offer, which like you say, headspace or calmness, around the mind and things, but doing it within your sessions when you're most needing of it, that's when to really practice it and just step back and ask yourself the question, like, does it really matter? And anybody who's run, hard intervals or done a hard bike set and feels like a failure because they're not hitting the pace, or someone's, running too quick of a pace and they can't seem to keep up with it, like, it feels like the world is ending at that time. But 10 minutes later, it can all be completely different if you just take a different approach to it with your mind.
There's a lot of comparisons and parallels to other artistic endeavors physically. When you're saying the word relax, we've used the word relax when it comes to weightlifting, like Olympic lifting. It's like, it's such a artistry of moving that barbell and getting ourselves underneath it, whether we do it in one motion or two, snatch or the clean and jerk. It's like, well, if you just fight against this object, you're gonna come off second best. Like, and then I think back, I'm like, okay, well, that's an external load example. And then I think back, I started in the pool, like as a swimmer, and then played rugby, and I was like, that's number one. I was like, you fight the water, you're fucked.
Yeah.
Like, you're gonna drown, mate. Like, don't fight it. And I remember even just learning to swim, and my mom was like, oh, if you ever feel like you're drowning, relax. It's like, are you out of your mind? Love. Like, that sounds like the worst advice you could ever give. I was like, yeah, well, you get in the bottom of the pool and try and fight the water, see what happens. Someone's gonna have to jump in and save you. You have to relax. You almost have to, like, connect with the things around you, connect with yourself, just flow through it. And then you speak to anybody who, I don't know, won a race, with cycling, tennis. I was like, how did you feel? I was like, oh, everything just kind of clicked. I wasn't really thinking.
Yeah.
They'd hit that flow state.
Yeah.
As is well known.
There's a great example on Sunday in the women's road race in the Olympics. There was a woman went off the front, the USA time trial champion, with 3K to go. She just rode off, and rightly so, won by over 40 seconds. And she's a time trial specialist, and time trialists within cycling are a unique breed of human who can push insane power, insane watts, under extreme, pain, basically, in your legs, for anywhere from 20 up to an hour and a half. So 20 minutes to 90 minutes. And they showed her face, and she was just, relaxed, let's say, deadpan, just doing what she knew how to do, which is take her brain off to a place of comfort, while her legs just destroyed the field behind her. But behind her was the world champion, a Belgian girl, Lotte Kopecky, and a former, well, probably the greatest of all time in women's cycling right now, who's Marianne Vos, who's from the Netherlands. And they were looking at each other like, are you going to chase or am I going to chase? In the end, neither of them chased and the USA lady won, but these guys were sprinting for silver. And it came down to the sprint. And the Belgian, you could see on her face was pure, I would call it anger, strain, tension, whatever you want to call it. Her neck is straining, her face is, just completely pulled in all directions, while Marianne Vos next to her, the wise old head experience is really low in her bike. You can see she's calm in her face. She's just focusing on the technique to win the sprint, while the other girl's focusing on the effort to win the sprint. Marianne Vos wins by, 0.2 of a second or something like that, or wins silver by 0.2 of a second. And when they showed the slow motion replay, it was because the Belgian girl, who's straining every muscle in her body, she hit a small bump in the road. And because she's pulling so hard on the bike and she's carrying so much tension in her body, her back wheel misses just by about 2 seconds. It comes off the ground and she misses a pedal stroke, which is all that's needed for the woman next to her, who's relaxed, who keeps her bike on the ground, who's focusing on the technique, to win. And so it's not about the effort is important, but what is that effort going into? Is the effort going into the aggression that you're showing towards trying to put out the power, or is it going into the technique that you know and that your coaches know is how you win bike races, or lift the weight, like you said, or, catch the water properly within swimming? Such a fine margin, but such a huge difference in what both of them were focusing on at the time.
That's fascinating. Cycling is a fascinating one. Cycling has my utmost admiration. And it's also the thing I have like the least experience with. I think I might have been on a road bike maybe once. Everybody as a kid has fucked around on like a BMX or a mountain bike, right? Like whether it's been your own or your mates, or, maybe one that you've nicked as a kid, not saying any names. But everyone's had some experience on that. And when it comes to that road bike, it is a different breed, especially with cleats, and then the time domain as well. It's like everyone, let's go to the gym now, sit on a watt bike and give it some beans. You're like, okay, sweet. And then we're off after 90 seconds and we're throwing up and we're like, all right, we're done. You're like, no, now you got to do it for 90 minutes. Like, excuse me? Like, you want to be able to sustain what amount of output for how long? Like, that's not possible. And then you turn on the TV and you're like, oh shit. Like, okay. Like, and I find endurance, historically speaking, the barrier entry is low. And let's say running as an example. You can use barefoot and you go outside and you put one foot in front of the other and try and jump between the two of them. Like cycling, maybe not because of the bike, and pool, maybe not. You can throw some devil's advocates in there, but running, for example, you can just get out there and start running. Like here, we got tracks for free. Just go for it, and you really can get a little slice of that flow state, that curiosity that we're talking about. And then if you wanted to bring in, you work in zone 2, which is going to help you with everything else. All right, mint. But let's go past that. I think the benefit from endurance is way more than simply you're getting a larger cardiovascular system.
Yeah. Maybe what you're getting at is efficiency wins in endurance, or slowing down the least essentially wins. Whereas in a lot of other sports, it's about what peak power can you hit at a moment in time, holding a particular technique. Whereas this morning is a perfect example. We run track, and we have one of our coaches, Dan, who's must be from your neck of the woods. You sound like you're North England, right?
Manchester.
Where are you from?
Yeah.
Manchester. Yeah, he's also from Manchester, actually.
Great city, man.
This guy loves lifting heavy weights,
Man.
And loves plyometrics, plays American football. I think he used to play rugby. And he's running with one of our endurance guys who's running Chicago Marathon in about 10 weeks. And the session is 400 meters running at quite a steady pace, 5 or 10K pace into 200 easy jogging into a 200 fast interval where you're pretty much going max effort for a 200. The first 4 or 5 reps, Dan, I would call him a power athlete, is absolutely skinning this marathon runner over the 200s, right? Like destroying him. And I'm just thinking, just wait until this, when the clock ticks past half an hour, everything's going to change. And as we entered, I think about 40 minutes of the session to go, and on the last rep, the marathon runner is 20 meters ahead of him on the sprint. And it's because he's more efficient. He's the efficient runner. And it's tortoise in the hare. Massively. But to become efficient, you have to put in the time and the work in efficient zones. It's not about going to a place of max. Like, we rarely ever go to our max in endurance sport. We want to go to usually top end of aerobic, enough to elicit some lactate threshold work. But do you ever want to go truly up to your zone 5, or what we call into the bin? Like, no, because it affects the next day. Whereas the power athlete, they love going there, and they can go there multiple times in a day if they want, because the recovery time from it is a lot shorter when it's based around a barbell or even some sprints and things. So efficiency in endurance, which I think partners up really well with being able to relax, but also around the thing you're saying around, like, for cyclists and stuff. If you're in a bike race, the person who does the least work but is there at the end in order to be the fastest or sprint, they're actually the one who's going to win. It's not about the guy who can do the most work, right? Which is almost counterintuitive, because there's so many other ways to continue, certainly in road biking, the person who's drafting the most is actually being the smartest. Now, yeah, it looks like they're not doing any of the work, because they're not, because they're being smart and efficient, but that's how you win that race. But the person on the competition floor, of whatever the competition is, and they've got to lift as much weight as possible, that you have to lift the weight. You can't just coast. You can't lift the same weight as the person next to you. You have to beat them. But that's not how it is in endurance. So you have to become, say, efficient, but also you have to drop the ego a little bit.
A lot more strategy, right?
If you want to be really efficient, you have to be hidden. You have to hide yourself in the pack. You have to just do the most basic work and just enough possible to get there at the end, to be in a position to win, which is ego. And when people first got on a bike, and that you say the person in the gym on the watt bike who can do 300 watts for whatever a minute, and they think no one's beating that, and then you tell them, yeah, that's what we do for an hour, they're like, what? How? How? And you're like, well, come and train with us and we'll show you. And they're like, oh no, I can't. If I can't do that with you guys, then how am I going to keep up? It's like, well, you sit in the wheel and you get a draft, but their ego can't handle it. So they're not ready for it. And I think that's what the barrier to entry of cycling is. Buying a bike, is clipping in, whatever, having the equipment, but it's also, the ego of going, all right, this skinny guy, 70 kilo skinny guy is going to be better than me. And I have to admit that until I'm in a position to be able to get trained up to be the same. It's a fascinating thing to watch, because the people who are patient enough and crack it, they become efficient cyclists. You see their whole perspective changes.
That's a fascinating observation. The barrier to entry into endurance is dropping the ego. That's a fascinating observation. I like that a lot.
But it works both ways, right?
Of course.
The endurance guy coming into the gym, you have to drop your ego.
Of course.
And yeah, I mean, the other day I worked out with one of our coaches, Andy, and the workout was 120 wall balls into 120 calorie row, right? And I do one class a week because I want to. I like doing one of our class programs in the gym. I'm not training for anything in endurance, particularly at the moment, so my body can take 2 days of feeling horrendous from it. And that workout, and I thought 120 wall balls, I'll be okay. 120 calories should be fine. I hadn't even done half the wall balls, and Andy was on the rower. And he finished the workout, and I think I still had like the whole row to do. And it was like, I was more than half the time behind him. And it just made me go, oh yeah,
Nice.
stay in your lane, Tom.
Well,
what did you expect?
We all need humble pie, man.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant to have.
The more we can eat it, I think the better people we become. Surround yourself with people who are better than you in as many ways as you can, and just watch yourself grow, man. Like, it is a fantastic and privileged place to be. Is like getting your ass kicked. I was like, yeah, like, this is cool, but you'll learn a hell of a lot.
Yeah, I agree with that. Eat humble pie as much as you can. It's a good one.
I got a big appetite, man. Brother, I appreciate your time, man. This is rad. I'm gonna have to get over to Dubai and maybe do some endurance, which lasts 15 minutes.
Yeah, doesn't sound like endurance, but yeah.
No, certainly not. I'll be the guy on the 90 seconds and be like, see, Tom, do you like that? He's like, yes, now sustain it for an hour. But hey,
yeah,
brother,
right,
appreciate
awesome.
it.
Hopefully you drop in when you can.
I will do, brother. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Have a great day.
Cheers, mate. You too.
Speak soon. Bye, everybody.